Hello and welcome to the week 0 review for the TNA Top 10 football show. It may have been limited this week, Andrew, but we got things to talk about.
Talk about, Terry. Plenty, as long as you can hear me.
I can hear you. Let's go.
Good. I apparently did not unmute my mic. That's my bad. Thank you
I
for
did
doing
that.
that. That's why you're in charge here, and I am not. But yeah, we got plenty to talk about. A couple of big games this weekend. And it has begun, as they said in the movie Mortal Kombat, in the game, that a first top 10 team has taken the first L of the season. And I was quite surprised by it. I don't know what you think. I know you were traveling, but I think expectations were pretty high in Tallahassee, and Dublin, Ireland was not good to them this past weekend.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of talent, and they still have a lot of talent. Sometimes having a lot of talent isn't everything, though. You got to bring those players together and do something and move in the right direction. And it's possible that they had a very bad start to the season. Who knows? They might bounce back pretty quickly from this. I'm not
Well,
sure who they got
we've talked
next.
about it. I mean, if they win the ACC championship, they're in.
Right.
That's simple. That's simple. But they did lose to an ACC team. I mean, Georgia Tech is an ACC team, and what we're talking
That's the
about, folks.
downside of it.
If you've been living under a rock, and I'm kidding, Florida State, Georgia Tech opened up college football. We're back. 12 p.m. on Saturday Eastern time from Dublin, Ireland. Our man Dave in the HSV was there, very excited by the fact that Florida State was playing in Ireland until they played the way they played. And this was a very clean game, especially for a first outing, Terry. You saw a box score. You've got it right here for us.
Right. No turnovers from either side.
And 4 total penalties.
Right.
Between both teams. So, I mean, it was a very, very, very well played football game. Here's the bottom line on it, though. Georgia Tech got pretty much handled on the opening drive by Florida State, and then they responded. Right. And they matched, and it's 8-7 or whatever. And, I mean, they got caught off guard with a swinging gate play for a 2-point conversion, for Pete's sake. But then they established the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And you can see right there, 190 yards rushing. 5.3 yards a carry means you're going to get first downs, Terry.
Right.
And
more than 2 yards a carry more than Florida State. That's huge.
Yeah. And when you're talking about ball control, clock, wearing a team down, and quite frankly, Georgia Tech's offensive line imposed its will on what was a very highly touted defensive line, linebackers and cornerbacks and defensive back core. I don't think it's over by any means for Florida State. DJ, for his part, DJU as they're calling him, because nobody wants to try to say his last name, and I'm not even going to pretend to. But it's not ukulele, for those of you playing along. But DJ didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't do anything that won him the game either. So this game, Georgia Tech did what you do to win championship football games. They controlled the clock. They controlled the line of scrimmage. They ran the ball. And, you know, regardless of how vogue it is or how sexy it is to be a passing team, when you can run 7 and 8 minutes off the clock and come away with 7 points, it's huge. It's absolutely a big deal. And they did it twice to Florida State's defense Saturday. And then when the kicker needed to kick that 44-yard field goal for the win, Terry, guess what?
He did it.
He did it. So, right. Clutch situation.
Yeah, and you kind of spoke to it a little bit. It's not like DJ went out there and threw 5 interceptions. It wasn't that kind of thing. He just wasn't really pushing the ball down the field like you want a Florida State quarterback to do. You know, I'm an Auburn guy. That's kind of what the feeling of Peyton Thorne had been all season, last season, just not pushing the ball down the field, not turning the ball over a lot. But at some point, you've got to take some risks and move the ball. And maybe that's what DJ's doing, but maybe they can go back to practice, figure out how to adjust, and get him in some more comfortable positions and move forward and do better. because like you said, he didn't turn the ball over. He was 19 to 27, 193. That's not terrible, but it's not what you want Florida State's quarterback to do against Georgia Tech.
Well, and Georgia Tech's defense, to their credit, held Florida State, a very good team, where the head coach calls the offense under 300 total yards.
Right.
That's a big deal in college football these days.
It is.
When you see some teams putting up 500, 600, 700 yards, I expect Ohio State to do that to Akron this coming weekend, Saturday. Chip Kelly's going to have them flying, Terry. But I think Florida State can bounce back, but they've got Notre Dame, they've got Clemson, they've got Miami on the schedule. They got North Carolina, and they got the Wolfies.
It gets more difficult. You're not playing Georgia Tech again. Georgia Tech did not have any votes in the top 25 poll in the AP or the coaches. This is not a team that was right there toward the top. There was no expectation of this.
No. And they had such a terrible defense last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they turned it, and they turned it up. And they did a great job Saturday. Good for them. Good win for the team, the new coach, the program. And Florida State's Florida State. Mike Norvell is a very capable coach. They've got very good team. They've got 5-star athletes in every position. They'll be fine.
Yeah, they have potential to bounce back. I mean, Clemson started slow last year, and we were really shitting on them a lot, and they bounced back. Might be Florida State's turn to do that. I mean, they were undefeated last year. Obviously, that's not happened this year, but they've got an opportunity to still win this conference, but it's going to be an uphill battle the whole year.
Well, and here's the worst part, and Dave will probably hate me when he hears this because he does listen to our show, which we very much appreciate. All of the whining and crying they did about the bowl game, 63-3 loss to Georgia, and, well, our team didn't play and our quarterback was hurt, blah, blah, blah. And you go out and you don't play with physicality or intent, and Georgia Tech beats you. Georgia Tech beat Florida State. Make no mistake about it. This was not, like you said, a pick six or a fumble, or some stupid play. This was Georgia Tech lining up, putting 11 men on the field, putting 7 in the box, and they were finding people to hit. And good for them. And even their coach, when he got his mandatory interview, he said, run the ball. So, someone like me that's been a Nebraska fan my whole life, they ran read option. They didn't run triple option. When Paul Johnson, I think it was, or whoever it was, he was the triple option architect there at Florida or at Georgia Tech. They ran read option. And unfortunately, Florida State was, back on their heels and on their ankles most of the time because they weren't sure which way to go. They got to get better reading because they are going to see some teams that do think that they've got the capability to play in the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, and the way that you run the ball, you got to push guys around up front, and they did that.
Well, and we had a comment in the group chat. We had a comment in the group chat. Norvell's offense requires them to be able to run the ball as well for Florida State.
Yeah,
but they only ran 3.2 yards carry. But he's running a run option, pass, RPO, play action based offense. He wants to be able to get his receivers deep, make you account for the running game, and he's very, very good at it. I don't think that this is real. I think this is a stubbed toe. I don't think this is a broken foot. Let me put it that way.
All right. Well, I mean, it was a close game the whole way. It's just kind of the way it was, where you wanted DJ to step up, and that just didn't happen. Credit Georgia Tech for coming out and playing, pushing Florida State around and winning the football game, and credit the kicker for sealing it at the end.
And I'll be honest with you, just my final thought, the way Florida State opened up that first drive, because I had told Dave, I said, oh, shit, Florida State's going to win by 28 points. I was like, oh, God, this is not good. Then I saw the way Georgia Tech started running the ball, and it came back to Nick Saban quote. They ran through us like shit through a tin horn, and we could not stop them.
And I think that was about Georgia Southern when he said that. So those Georgia teams seem to do it.
We could not, and he does the hand. We could not stop them.
All right.
Um,
The only other game worth mentioning this week, since there were only 4 or 5, SMU, who is a team that is not in the top 25 but did receive some votes, had to storm back against Nevada and scored 16 points in the fourth quarter to win 25-24. The stats really point toward SMU winning this game and a little bit of dominance, but that came late. They could
way
not
late.
run the ball, 2.9 yards a carry. They did throw for over 300 yards.
Well, and here's the thing that the announcers made a big deal of, and rightfully so. Nevada was 2-10 last year and was ranked 125 and below, meaning not good, in
Right.
every defensive category. And look what they did to SMU. Yeah, 408 yards total offense. To your point, Terry, came late, but they shut down the rushing attack of SFU or of SMU. Excuse me, Southern Methodist. They got an interception. Now this game, contrary to the other game, this game was filled with penalties, and there was an ejection, and one of the players said he was spitting on the ground, and the referee took it. He was spitting at the other player
Okay.
through a personal foul. I mean, it was
They
a
were
whole
ready to pull
thing.
those flags out.
But Nevada, up until about halfway through the fourth quarter, was in full control of this game.
Right.
And then they had a safety, and then SMU scored, and then they got the turnover, and then SMU got the go-home touchdown.
Goodness.
But Nevada put up a fight to the very end. And one game that you didn't mention, and I'm going to only mention it briefly because you don't have a graphic.
Right.
Who's the team that beat Auburn last year? New Mexico?
New Mexico State.
Montana State doing the Lord's work on Terry's behalf this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. The FBS semifinalists for the Division II championship took down New Mexico and beat them 35-31, coming back from a 31-14 deficit in the second half.
All right.
So that team is real, and there's a reason I mention it, because you've got a Coach Prime quote for us for Mr. Deion Sanders. Is it about him talking about the reporters again?
Oh, what was it? I don't have it ready to go. Sorry about that.
Well, that might have been a note from last week, to be honest, because he's been quite controversial. But now Colorado, I don't know if you've seen this. The University of Colorado has banned the Denver Post from speaking to any of their athletic departments because of one writer who is picking on Coach Prime and Deion Sanders. If they lose to
North here.
Oh, you have the quote? Perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had to look in our text chat. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine.
Deion says, if you weren't with us when we went 4-8, don't come to our parade when we bring home the hardware. I'm not sure what hardware he's thinking he's bringing home.
Yeah, I don't. Well, obviously, as a Nebraska fan that gets to see them September the 7th under the lights, I don't think he's taken home any hardware. But we have to get through UTEP first, so we'll stop right there. But anyway, yeah, Coach Prime apparently has an adversarial relationship now with the Denver Post.
Right.
And has continued to pick fights with reporters and be very confrontational about anything coming out that he deems as negative. I guess if you're not kissing Deion Sanders' ass, he doesn't want to hear from you.
And the school is supporting that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is wrong.
Yeah.
Because Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes will not finish in the top half of the Big 12.
That's right.
And they're not going to finish in the top half of the Big 12 with this attitude. Regardless of the Nebraska game, forget that. They thought they were going to run the table last year, and then they went to Eugene, Oregon. And the Ducks
it got rough. Yeah.
Cranked it on them. And that one,
of course,
I think
they had the TCU game, and then they had the Nebraska game last year.
Yeah.
So they really thought they were doing something, but
yeah,
Oregon changed their minds.
Well, and Nebraska's got a little bit different quarterback, which we're going to talk about here shortly. So, Terry, do we have a top 10 this week?
We do have a top 10. So I will say it was limited this week. Obviously, we talked about the two teams that were even options in the poll last week. That was Florida State and SMU. I mentioned Georgia Tech did not get any votes in the poll, so they were not a poll option this week. Pretty sure they will be next week after they knocked off Florida State. But they weren't an option on this week, so probably a bunch of teams that still hasn't played yet, but let's run through it. Number 10, Michigan Wolverines, coming off a national championship. We've talked about, they're not the cream of the crop of the Big Ten. There's definitely teams ahead of them, and there's teams coming in from the Pac-12 that are ahead of them. So Michigan's number 10 for now.
News on Michigan, because you wanted to know. You asked me. I heard
That's
you.
right. I heard it.
Is that the Scallions NCAA letter's been served to Michigan. So the official ruling or whatever was served today to Michigan. I didn't read it, but it's been served to Michigan. So
okay.
And this is the one where Harbaugh can't coach for 4 or 5 years now inside the NCAA and all that sort of thing. So anyway, Michigan will probably still be a good ball club because you're going to have residual effects of recruiting from the Harbaugh era. We're going to find out what type of coach Moore is week 2 because they play Texas.
Well, reality is, obviously they lost some players, but he did coach quite a few games last year.
6. He coached 6 of the 15 games last year.
That's right. So we talk about them not being nearly as good this year, but let's not fool ourselves. They're still there.
Yeah. And I still think this is the year Ohio State's going to dominate Michigan if there ever was one, but that's because of what Ohio State is. And we'll get to them here in a minute because I know they're in the top 10.
Number 9, Notre Dame. This is a team that's been debated by a lot of people. They're pretty high in the AP poll. They're not as high for our poll. There's a lot of people thinking they're too high in the AP. We got them at 9. That's probably reasonable, I think.
Well, they haven't played a game, haven't played a snap. They draw A&M, which we're going to talk about.
Right.
And that'll be a great test for Marcus Freeman and his guys. Playing A&M. But you have a new quarterback, got a lot of new personnel. But Notre Dame had really good games last year, Terry, and they fought and fought and fought. And I think that this is probably the right ranking for an unproven team, but I also think just join the ACC already. So.
Yeah, that's true. I had a conversation with a guy at the Dallas airport while I was drinking my Jack and Coke and eating my brisket at the bar. And he was a North Carolina fan. And he was talking about Notre Dame. He said the ACC missed their opportunity to bring them in. They really could have cornered them on it, but they didn't do it. So I just don't see it happening.
Well, and now you got the mass exodus. By the way, Terry, that's still going on too. They've gone to arbitration, and the lawsuit continues with Clemson and Florida State. Since you said ACC, who's number 8?
Number 8 is Penn State. Another one, this is a team I've been critical of. I think 8's a decent spot for them. They're a very good team, but they're going to have to figure out a way to win the big football games.
They're coached well. They're disciplined. They lost their defensive coordinator to the head coaching job, Manny
Diaz.
Diaz, thank you. Manny Diaz is now the head coach at Duke. So Penn State is not a team that loses a lot of games. Nobody think that we're saying they don't win the big game though, and
they win the games they're supposed to win.
Yeah,
but they don't often win the games.
And they're in the big games. They're in the big games a lot of times, but they're not.
Now they did whip Iowa last year, so let's not fool ourselves because Iowa was good, but
yeah, Penn State, the defense I think is going to be a little bit of a question this year because Manny Diaz was so good on defense. Right. And that's what got him the head coaching job again. So we'll see. Franklin, to me, again, we've talked about this, is a little bit on the hot seat. Penn State needs to come out. They need to come out, motivated, ready to play. Aller, is it Aller? I believe. Aller. He's the starter again. They've got to get more out of him. We talked about DJ push the ball down the field.
Right.
With Penn State, you've got to get him to push that damn ball down the field.
They played defense and they ran the ball last year. If they're going to win these big games, they got to get more of a passing game going.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about them here in a minute, but they've got a fucking date in Morgantown, and that's a date nobody wants in college football.
Here's how much of a passing game they didn't have last year. Their leading receiver last year transferred to Auburn, and it's not even a story.
I love you for that.
That's how much their passing game didn't exist.
Not even a story. I love you for that. That's awesome.
Number 7, Clemson. And
Yep.
they've got opportunity now. Florida State's already put it out there with an ACC loss. Dabo, he's in the driver's seat. I mean,
We're gonna
already
get to the
hasn't
we're
played
gonna
a
get to
game.
the game preview though. He doesn't have an easy road either.
He does
Uh,
not.
and
But luckily, that first game doesn't
is
really matter
non-conference.
for that conference. Yeah.
Is non-conference, exactly. But it does matter stylistically. Now, everybody don't mistake what Terry and I are saying about Clemson. I think they're a little high here in our poll because they have had a severe drop-off. But when you get Deshaun Watson and you get Trevor Lawrence in consecutive classes and years as your quarterbacks, you're going to win games. Those guys are ballers in college. That's why they won national championships. That's why they took down the mighty Alabama, not once, but twice for the national title. But you also have to remember that you got to find a way to replace those guys. Brent Venables is the head coach at Oklahoma. He's no longer calling the defense at Clemson. This is a much different team. And until Dabo decides that he is going to take advantage of the transfer portal, that he's going to play the NIL game, he is always going to be behind the 8 ball. And he is not in the SEC. But Clemson is located in South Carolina, and they recruit Georgia, Florida,
Right.
South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama.
Right.
If you're not willing to pay to play and Georgia's willing to write you $1 million check, Terry, who are you going to go play for? Thank you. It's
Right.
Georgia.
And I mean, the transfer portal is a net loss for Clemson every season until something changes.
Correct.
I mean, and that's no good for anybody. You
And I
need
don't
that
wanna-
to be a game.
I don't want to beat that dead horse, but that is where my issue with Dabo and putting him this high is they didn't go after people. He thinks his system is good enough, and maybe it
You're going
is.
to lose them.
But if you don't win games, you're not. And we've said that. We'll say it again. You've got to win.
That's right. Number 6, Alabama.
Roll Tide. They got adjusted this week, Terry. They were number 2
I
last
did
week.
notice there was a bit of an adjustment. We did throw some things out there. The voters listened a little bit. Probably realistic. I mean, they've got every opportunity to climb this pole. There's no reason they can't, but there's some tough games on their schedule, just like there's tough games on Auburn's schedule. Texas and Oklahoma are coming into the SEC, and everybody's going to be impacted by that.
And let's not forget, 17 years the GOAT sat in that office in Tuscaloosa, and he's not there anymore. And that is not a shot at Kalen DeBoer. But when you're looking at, and I always talk about head coach advantages, because Tom Osborne had one for years. If Tom Osborne for the University of Nebraska was standing on the sideline chomping that double bubble or Big Red, whatever gum it was, because he could chomp the shit out of some gum like I do, it was worth 14 points. Having Tom Osborne on the sideline, Nebraska was already up 14 points because he was that good. Nick Saban presence on the sideline for Alabama for so long psyched people out before the ball ever was snapped. And nobody will ever convince me otherwise. You got young coaches or people that look up to him or whatever going up against Nick Saban. You really have nothing to lose but your job in modern college football. So that intimidation factor, that experience, it's not there. This I will say, though, Kellen DeBoer has won everywhere he's gone.
He has, and we doubted him all year last year, and he kept winning.
And far less resources than the University of Alabama is going to give him. So I think Alabama's probably right. And remember, our man, 4th and 31, Jalen Monroe, won the SEC title against Georgia.
And he's
probably a leading contender for the Heisman and the O'Brien Award and all that.
Yep.
Is the trigger man at Alabama. So I think the Tide are the team to contend with, but again, to your point, they play Georgia early. They've got Texas on the schedule. Obviously, they're going to play Auburn and Ole Miss, and I mean it could get ugly for them real fast.
It's tough. It could be, and I'm not predicting 4 losses, but there are 4 opportunities for losses, and we'll just see what they do. Number 5, Ole Miss did slide ahead of Alabama this week in the poll. This is a good team. This is another where we've talked about Penn State needing to win the big game. Ole Miss has been in the big games, and they need to win the big games too. Lane
Well,
is
and this
there. He's got the capability. Let's see it happen.
well, and this is a trend. I didn't mean to about interrupt you. This is a trend we're seeing. Carson Beck, well experienced quarterback at Georgia. Jackson Dart,
Right.
well experienced quarterback at Ole Miss. Jalen Milroe, well experienced quarterback at the University of Alabama. You
Right.
are bringing in guys that have played at a very high level in very high profile football games, and they didn't go to the NFL. They didn't transfer out of the program. Jackson Dart is arguably the best quarterback in the SEC. I said arguably because it's still in a world that Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe exist. But
And you were
this guy can sling the ball, and of all of these teams, he's got the guy with the offensive mind in Lane Kiffin. And by all reports, Terry, you and I read them all year doing this show. Lane Kiffin won the transfer portal battle this year. That's what all of the analysis says is he built the team to take the SEC. But he's going to have a fight on his hands to do it because we're at number 5 and there are several other teams on this list.
and there's some SEC teams ahead of them here too.
Correct. But that's a trend we're going to see, though, experienced quarterbacks in the SEC all year long.
That's right. It's going to be some fun games. That's the thing about it. Ole Miss might have lost some of these close games, but they were very exciting. So Ole Miss has some very exciting games, and we're going to be ready to see those this year. Number 4, Texas comes into the SEC, and they find themselves at number 4 in our poll. Probably the right place.
Probably the right place. Quinn Ewers coming back. Again, an SEC experienced quarterback with big game. And, of course, Arch Manning sitting right there behind him. Sarkisian knows how to win and has taken down Alabama and made the semifinals last year. I think Texas doesn't have an easy way there, but is definitely a playoff team.
Definitely. And if I remember back, I picked them to win the conference. It's funny. I got to really document these things because I got to look back to see who I even picked.
And he refuses to screenshot his poll, folks.
Number 3, Oregon finds themselves at number 3.
Quack, quack, quack. And I don't know that I agree with the Ducks being this high. They lost a lot when Bo Nix left.
Right.
But they got Gabriel. So, and they're still going to have a good defense. They're going to be aggressive. They've got a young coach that's motivated. And as we talked about last week, jokingly, Terry, but it's the truth, they got a guy willing to write a check for whatever it takes to bring a national championship back
Unlimited to NIL, basically, from Nike.
From Nike. The Ducks are going to be fun. They play in the Big Ten, probably against who's number 2, week 3, maybe 4. No, it's October.
Great.
They play in October because it's October the 12th. It's going to be Ohio State and Oregon, and it's in Eugene. So advantage to the Ducks that way. But again, I don't know if you're going to have too many advantages against Ohio State this year. Oregon, high flying. I think they find a way to win a lot of games this year, Terry. And I think that they make the playoff as well.
Yep.
Probably the right spot for. And I think the AP put them at the 3rd spot too, as well as the coaches poll.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's pretty much consistent.
Yeah.
All right. You are correct. Number 2, Ohio State. So Ohio State, overall pick by most people to win the Big Ten. Just barely above Oregon in all of the polls, including ours. But they are stacked.
Offense, defense, special team,
Chip
coaching
Kelly.
Staff. This team is built to win a championship if there ever was one. And God forbid the train derail in Columbus. And I don't say that sarcastically. It'll be ugly if they lose a regular season game in Columbus, I think. Because remember, there was the Urban Meyer year, I believe they won the championship, that Virginia Tech came in and beat them. And then of course Ohio State runs the table and wins the playoff
Right.
and all that. But Virginia Tech beat them in a non-conference game. It might have been the season opener. Anyway, Ohio State's got Akron this week. They shouldn't put a spread on that game because that'll be ugly, but you're going to get your first taste. I would expect to see the same defense we saw last year. Very hard hitting, very aggressive, very stingy. On the opposite side of the ball, I bet you we see 90-second sprints for touchdowns.
It'll be very interesting to see Chip Kelly with the amount of talent that Ohio State has on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and they've got who's the quarterback? Help me out.
Riley Leonard.
No, that's Notre Dame.
No, that's Notre Dame. Crap, I had this all documented.
Is it Jefferson? No, that was Arkansas.
Will Howard. That's right.
Will Howard,
from Kansas State. Yeah,
from Kansas State.
Yeah.
So he's going to have some good toys to play with. He's got a lot of receivers. I think Ohio State is going to be a force to be reckoned with in college football this year. Not that they aren't every year, but this year, when you went out and you spent $25 million and got a coach, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, the swapping around of particularly quarterbacks, because we got Will Howard at Ohio State. Ohio State had a good quarterback.
He
transferred out.
He went to
he's
11
at Syracuse now.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous the amount of jumping around that we see. But is Will Howard going to be the guy? I mean, he was good at Kansas State, but being good at Kansas State is a little different than being good at Ohio State. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, but the difference is too, no offense to what you said, I agree with you. There's a different level of expectation there.
Right.
There's also a different level of tools and weapons that he's going to have. He's going to have a lot
surrounded by talent.
Yeah, a lot better talent. And that's just the nature of the beast. Go to Kansas State, go to Ohio State. Which one are you going to pick, Terry? I mean,
Ohio State, if I can get some playing time, that's for sure.
Exactly. And number one with a bullet.
Number one, the Georgia Bulldogs, no surprise. And I know they got beat by Alabama in the conference championship game last year, and I know they didn't go to the playoffs, but this is a team that hasn't lost much in a long time.
3 times undefeated regular seasons. The only 2 losses they've had in the last 3 years have been to Alabama in the SEC title game. And oh, by the way, they still made the playoff in one of those seasons and won the national championship, beating Alabama and beating them by 3 scores. Kirby Smart, I've said it a million times, the best pupil that Professor Nick Saban ever had, and has really made Georgia his own. This is no longer Kirby standing in the shadow of Nick Saban. He has made Georgia his own. Criminals are not. Good lawyers are not. Georgia is going to be a force for everybody to play against. They are my pick to win the national championship. And I know I picked them last year. But that Georgia football team, when they decide they're going to play, they're going to play. And to your point, Terry, they returned 17 starters, including the quarterback. And he was a big deal who didn't get a whole lot of press last year.
He just gets it done. I mean, he's not the big name. You know, you got all these flashy names running around, but
in a world where Jalen Daniels existed, Carson Beck was not anybody anyone was paying attention to. But if you looked at their stat lines, Carson Beck is a hell of a quarterback.
And he just keeps piling on the stats. I mean, it's one of those things where when coaches say game manager in a positive way, this is who they mean.
He doesn't
Not game manager and he can't do anything. He can, and he does. But he just, like you said, he doesn't make those mistakes. He's not taking a bunch of risks, but he knows who he has surrounding him. He's got a ton of talent, and he's going to use those properly.
Yeah. And, you're going to see running back by committee. You're going to see big, athletic defensive tackles that are going to be able to get a 4-man rush on whoever they play. This is Georgia football. Physical, mean, beat us if you can football. And that's what makes it so great. And it's a whole mentality.
Well, let me run it down. And I got the sticky finger again. Sorry, guys, watching it. Got a little ahead. Week 0 poll. Number 10, Michigan. Number 9, Notre Dame. Penn State at number 8, Clemson at number 7, Alabama at number 6, Ole Miss at 5, Texas at 4, Oregon at 3, Ohio State at 2, and the Georgia Bulldogs continue to be at the top spot. None of these top 10 has played a game yet. The preseason top 10 had Florida State. They dropped out after their loss. There's a little bit of shuffling of the other teams, but this is a pretty solid ranking, I think, from the voters.
The only one that I don't agree with is that Missouri's getting no love from our people, but that's okay. They got time to prove they deserve the love.
They are either 11 or 12. They are right there. I don't remember exactly where, but they were close. I think Oklahoma State was pretty high. So they're a little bit outside the top 10 also. That might be a little high for them, but I think that might be – they're getting a lot of love because that might be who people are picking for the Big 12 champion.
Sure. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's a good list, guys. We appreciate your participation. Remember, we need you every week, and the way this is going to work, or the way Terry and I plan for it to work, is at the close of football Saturday, the poll will come out as long as the teams have a chance of being ranked. If it's some West Coast game and that team has no chance of making the top 25, we are letting it rip, Tater Chip. And then the poll will close Sunday because we've got to do the show. So
right, and that's where SMU had a later game the other day, so it did stay closed for a while. If it weren't for the SMU game, we would have opened it up right after the Florida State game.
And you and I both talked about it, and neither one of them made this list, but they are top 25 teams. LSU, USC play, and we'll get into it. They play next week on a Sunday while we're recording the show. So
yeah, and we'll talk about that too. And let's go ahead and look at next week's games. We're calling it Week 1 games we care about.
Correct.
Maybe you don't care about every one of these games, but there's a couple of games on here, obviously, that we care about that they're not national games necessarily, but they're teams we like. But let me run them down a little bit. We got a big game between Clemson and Georgia. Georgia's favored by 13.5. That seems pretty high, but it's Georgia.
I don't think it's high enough because, baby, this is in Athens. And you know who's coming down the track, Terry. I don't have to remind you that it's Mean Machine in the red and black.
Oh, it just seems really big to see Clemson in a game where the other team's favored by 13.5 points.
Yeah, I'm going to go 21 plus. I really think Georgia uses this as a statement game, and they're going to put it on Clemson. Again, the biggest advantage, you would think this would be a neutral site game. We do have one of those this year on this list. The SC LSU game, I believe, is in Las Vegas, if I remember correctly. But Georgia's neutral territory is the freaking Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. It's not really neutral anyway. So
it's like Legion Field for Alabama. We won't go there today.
This is in Athens. It's early. It's early in the seasons. You're going to see some mistakes, I think, but I think that experience of Georgia cannot be overstated. I think the experience, the championship level experience they bring to the table, everybody should be afraid of. Now, this is what I'd like to see out of the Georgia Bulldogs, and I know you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I would like to see them actually play every game, because remember last year, we kind of shit on them because it was like they just put it in cruise control, and they were like,
of the year. About a third of the way through the season, they were slacking off a little bit. But
yeah,
I don't remember what game it was. Did they go to Missouri or somewhere and really rough them up?
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, okay.
They beat the brakes off Ole Miss. Missouri only lost by 10.
Okay.
And we talked about Missouri's biggest reason for losing is there's a huge talent gap, unfortunately, between Columbia, Missouri, and Athens, Georgia. It's a fact.
There should not be a huge talent gap here with Clemson. Clemson has some talent. But
I think Clemson's fallen off, though, buddy. That's why I'm saying it's going to be 21 plus. They didn't ask me to handicap it, but that's what I'm doing.
I'm having a hard time believing it. And I will say this. We're not necessarily picking the games. We will tell our thoughts on the games that we're interested in. But we will put out the link again for the Pick'em, for the college football Pick'em that we created. Please join that and join in. We'll talk about that.
Oh.
That does start this week. So I have picked my games for this week already. There were no week 0 games.
I have not. I did not. I messed up. We're not picking who we want to win. We're not going to do it on the show. I thought we did the.
No, we can do that.
Well, obviously, I'm picking Georgia. And my rule, as always, guys, is until someone takes Georgia down, or Ohio State just looks like God mode, they're going to be the number 1 team as far as I'm concerned. Now,
you
the
said
good news
that
is,
last year, and you kind of backed off of it.
Only after they just decided to be stupid. But remember, I didn't vote Alabama in the top 10 for 4 weeks either after the Texas loss.
Well, there is like a voter in the coaches poll picking Michigan as number 1 right now. So
that's probably the Michigan coach.
That's just pretty stubborn.
But anyway, I'm picking Georgia, Terry, and I honestly think
definitely.
I think they're going to just be more physical than Clemson can match, just because of who Georgia is. They've got the experience, and I think honestly, this is a statement game for them. This is an opportunity for them to remind everybody in the SEC that we've won 36 straight regular conference games for a reason, and you all have to beat us because we're going to beat you. Meaning, you better bring whatever it is you have and be willing to use it.
I will pick Georgia, but I will go more in line with the line here, and I'll say 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
The next game, also Saturday at noon, Penn State in West Virginia. Penn State on the road, favored by 8.5.
I think this is the game with some upset opportunity because it's in Morgantown. And them crazy bastards don't have anything but football. I'm going to go with West Virginia with the upset.
Wow, I'm a little surprised by that because this to me is similar when Penn State played Iowa last year, and Iowa was, I don't know what their record was at that point, but Penn State just trashed them. I think the talent level is just so different here that even though West Virginia really sneaks up on us sometimes, I think Penn State's going to be too much. And I think they got them by a couple of touchdowns.
They probably do, but I am not voting against Morgantown on opening day.
All right.
And we have to argue about something. Can't agree on
right. Well, we got an interesting one coming up here. We got Miami at Florida in the Swamp.
Can they both lose?
I would love if they both lost. That's Saturday at 3:30. Miami's only favored by 2.5 here. But Florida, our expectation is they win 4 football games, and this is not one of them I expect to win.
Did you see Spurrier thinks they can win 9 or 10?
God. That's a surprise. I did not see that. Spurrier said he thinks
Florida can win 9 or 10 games.
I don't know what schedule he's looking at.
I don't either, but I think this is one of their winnable games because it's early.
Yeah.
Miami is highly touted, but not by me. They haven't proven anything. We've seen them multiple times in the last 10 seasons be rated or preseason very high, expectation very high, and then fail to deliver. Until Miami shows me something, I'm going with the Gators in Gainesville in the Swamp.
Wow.
And I'll take it by a field goal.
Okay, well, I'm going a field goal the other direction, pretty much in line with it. I don't think Miami beats them by 10, but I think Miami does win this one by a field goal. So field goal, touchdown, something like that.
I think the physicality and the speed of the SEC is going to help Florida in this game. But once they start playing everybody else in the SEC, that's when they're going to have trouble.
All right. Well, I'm with you. I wish they could both lose.
You're correct, because fuck Miami.
But then the next game, the 4th game, Saturday at 3:30 in Lincoln, Nebraska, UTEP comes to town.
Fox has got the game, Terry. You going to tell me people aren't excited to see Mr. Raiola, the starting quarterback?
The line here is 27.5.
Yeah, Nebraska's going to roll, and here's why. They're at home. Raiola's the quarterback. This is not the turnover machine Jeff Sims that opened last year's against Minnesota. This is the former number 1 5-star recruit in the country. He is the trigger man officially as of last week. Big shocker. I've been telling y'all for 6 months he was going to be the starting quarterback at the University of Nebraska. He earned the job. Heinrich's going to be involved. Obviously, Danny Killian, the backup quarterback. They named, I don't know if you know about the tradition, Terry. They did the single digits this year,
Okay.
again, under Matt Rule. 9 of the 10 single digits throw the bones. Defense. The entire defensive line won those jobs, won those digits, including, and 2 of the corners won those numbers. So Nebraska's defense there's supposed to be a lot. Now, I thought Florida State was going to deliver on the expectations, but one thing I said, and I've said again and again, now it's time to play. UTEP, Nebraska will beat. 28 seems like a lot.
Yeah.
But if they get that offense rolling and they get a couple turnovers, they could get that momentum in Lincoln and steamroll them. Regardless, that number underneath my name, 397, will be the 397th consecutive sellout since 1962. Untouchable. But I'm taking Nebraska in a runaway. They're going to make a few mistakes. They may turn the ball over. I hope Raiola throws his first interception of the season in this game. You know why? Because they got a good enough team that it won't matter. Let's get that shit out of the way and let's move on.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, and I've seen this with Auburn also, like in 2010, the very first game of the year, Auburn played Western Louisiana or somebody, and things weren't working, and they just had to use Cam Newton's athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you are in these games, the first one of the year, not everything's gelling like it needs to yet. And you're learning some things, but your athleticism will pull you through. So they might hit some of that, but they should be able to, like you said, they have so much more athletic ability than UTEP. They should be able to steamroll them, even if they don't do it the exact way they wanted to.
Yeah, and I don't know that they've named the running back yet. They've got 4 running backs, Terry. I don't know that they've named the running back yet. But we know that the defensive line's strong. The linebacker core is got experience, and then we're supposed to have one of the better, sets of cornerbacks. So we'll see. But I expect Nebraska to win and win big Saturday and get ready for Coach Prime and the boys. Speaking of which, I forgot that game. They drew the 3-time national champion North Dakota State. Bison, I think it is. I'm going to pick North Dakota State to beat Colorado as a bonus pick.
Excellent.
So, anyway, Nebraska huge. I think Nebraska wins big.
Definitely. I don't know if they hit the 27.5. Depends on if they
That's
get
a big ass number. Like
yeah, we'll
when
see.
you've watched your team,
might pull the starters at some point.
When you've watched your team legitimately lose 35 games by a score or less in the last 6 seasons, 35 games in the last 6 seasons, they've lost by a touchdown or less. I have a hard time buying into a 28-point victory, even if it is UTEP.
Maybe so. We'll see what happens.
Notre Dame versus A&M Saturday night.
That'll probably be maybe the best game.
Primetime game, yeah, and it's in College Station.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and pick Notre Dame here. I know A&M is favored at home. I have very little confidence in A&M. And I know Jimbo's not there anymore. Mike Elko's in. I think they lost some key pieces from last year. They brought some guys in. I don't know. I think A&M is ranked a little too high in the polls, and I think Notre Dame comes in and wins.
I agree with you. I think Notre Dame's defense, A&M's defense is going to keep them in the game, but I don't think they've got enough with what left with Jimbo Fisher's termination.
Right.
That Elko, I don't think Elko's got enough at College Station. And I'm with you, Terry. I've said that this could be a team that ends below 500 in A&M with the new additions to because they got Texas. They've got to play Texas and everybody else that they're going to play on that schedule. I'm going Notre Dame, probably 10 points in College Station.
10 points is big. I'll go a touchdown. But I think Notre Dame wins it. Even though, there's still questions about Notre Dame, but I got more questions about A&M.
Well, we know Riley Leonard's tough, and we know Marcus Freeman's defense is going to be good. I can't tell
Yep.
you who's on the defense, but I can tell you that man knows how to put it all together. So I would and we saw Riley Leonard lead Duke injured to
That is
beat Clemson.
interesting. Riley Leonard versus Mike Elko. I have not thought about that.
Yep,
This will be interesting.
former coach. Yeah.
Speaking of A&M, we got Alabama A&M going to Auburn, and this is supposed to be so one-sided. There is no line on this game. Auburn should steamroll A&M. It's going to be the same kind of thing, though. Auburn's brought in some talent. They brought in some freshmen, receivers, trying to get the passing game going. We'll see what happens, but they just have so much more of a talent level than A&M that this shouldn't be close. 30-point victory.
Yeah, I think I couldn't find it. I mean, like Terry said, I put these numbers together. I could not find a spread. You said that's probably because this thing is going to get way out of hand.
They do that from time to time on these games. They just don't put it out there.
And I don't know. I don't have any basis of A&M. I expect Auburn to roll in this game.
The only thing I'll say about A&M, it is just north of Huntsville. It is where John Stallworth played college football. But other than that, they've been a Division II team for years. Maybe 10 years ago, they came up to 1AA or FCS, but they are what they are. They're getting a paycheck.
Yeah, I was going to say get paid, right? Yeah, to get that ass whooped. Yeah.
And Auburn needs a practice game, and this is what this is going to be.
Well, and like you said, now we've got to see if Hugh Freeze is going to call the plays.
Yeah. He better. If he doesn't, then there's going to be riots.
Well, you said where he's best, and that was true at Ole Miss, and
he did it everywhere he's been until last year, and you could tell a difference where he did it versus where somebody else did it, and there's no excuse not to. I mean, we've seen the results. That's what needs to happen.
Gotcha. Yeah. Makes good sense to me. Last game, SC
Sunday.
out of the Big Ten. Is a Sunday game, which will be happening while we record next week. So that's why we're talking about it now.
So obviously this game will not be before the poll. We will not wait on this game because the poll is going to have to happen before we record. So this game will be included in the next poll.
That's correct. LSU versus SC. Obviously, SC having to replace Caleb Williams. LSU having to replace Jalen Daniels. They've got Nussmeier, who we saw. LSU people are pretty high on. I am not. Like, for your skepticism about A&M, that's how I approach LSU because I don't think Brian Kelly is as good a coach as everyone else.
I would love for A&M and LSU to both be dropping down.
And they didn't have any defense. LSU had no defense last year. And if they
won games only because of Jaden Daniels last year, they probably would have lost three more games.
Yeah, and you and I both said it. And I admit it, being the Alabama guy on this show, that when he went out of that Alabama game, the complexion of that game changed drastically.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Because they were going toe for toe, him and Milroe, just shot for shot. If this game has the chance of being a basketball game, depending on how good Nussmeier is in the offense now, that he's had the time to learn it and to not be in the shadow of Daniels, who, by the way, Terry, I don't know if you know this, earned the starting job as a rookie for the Commanders. He is going to be the starting quarterback. So you and I were very high on him. He is going to be the starting quarterback for Washington this year. I don't know who I want to pick because I don't like either of these teams.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of questions with both. It is a neutral site, so we can't even lean on the home team. That's tough. I'm excited to watch it. It'll be a Sunday night game. Obviously, we'll be recording for a big portion of it, so we'll have to watch it afterward or whatever. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with SC here because I think LSU without Jaden Daniels is going to be much worse, and I have a little more confidence with SC not having Williams at quarterback.
I agree with you. and we saw SC's quarterback last year a little bit. I think I understand that the bettors have the spread at 4.5 LSU advantage. I think if they turn this one into a sprint, though, advantage Southern Cal. Because that's the kind of game that Lincoln Riley loves. He don't focus on defense, you know. It's about like Mike Norvell last night or Saturday afternoon being asked, what do you guys need to do to get this goal line stopped? Well, we have to sustain drives and we've got to run the ball. And that's got nothing to do with the fact that they're on the 2-yard line getting ready to punch this in, you know, for Georgia Tech. They don't play defense. Neither of these teams play defense. So I think personally,
this is going to be the Pac-12 game.
Yeah, I think this. I didn't put the under over in here, Terry, but I would be shocked if they don't score 70 points between the two of them, if not more than that.
And I'm excited about these games. I mean, there's several games on this list right here, and
Give
you
me
know
SC
there's going to be some other game.
I'm with you. Give me SC by a touchdown.
That sounds about right. I'll say SC by a field goal, but I do believe that they'll win this. A lot of exciting games coming up.
Nothing has shown me, buddy, that either of these teams have improved their defense.
No.
So unless you've improved your defense, I don't want to hear about it. Because, I mean, you know I was very hard on SC last year when they let San Diego State, was it, score 28 points and run for 300-plus yards in that game. I'm like, what is wrong? No, that's the Aztecs, for God's sake. No, give me SC.
I will say that the 04 SC team gave up a lot of points to some lesser teams before they steamrolled back. But they don't have that capability on offense these days.
No. But, yeah, I like SC by a touchdown.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I will reiterate, we did put the college football pick'em link out there. We'll put it out there again. Please join that. Make your picks. Don't forget to do that. I'm not sure. I haven't checked to see how many people have joined that yet. Hopefully we get quite a few and we can have some competition there. Those games start this week. They did not have week 0 games. So that is just getting started up. I did look. They're not all big games. Some of them are teams that are lesser, like group of 5 competition. So that'll be good to pick those too. We'll learn about some of those teams along the way. But that's about it for the day, sir. I think that's pretty good. We've had a couple of good shows. It's great to talk about football results for the first time in a very long time.
Buddy, you know how excited I was. 12 o'clock yesterday. Florida State, Georgia Tech kicked off. Because this is my shit. Do not call. Do not write. Do not text. I am busy. And if you are a monster that planned your wedding on October the 12th this year, stop it right now. You need to cancel.
We ain't coming.
We're not going to be there.
All right. Well, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Allison, for being here for the other show and being here with us for this show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, everybody, for voting and all the feedback. Any questions or comments that you have, please reach out to us. We don't have a really super official way for that other than just reach out to our social media DMs if you need to. Reach out to us individually if you need to. I'm TWeave79. Andrew is 30-year fan. Allison is Allison Fay. We are available if you have some comments, and we appreciate any support. And to wrap it up, be a champ this week in everything that you do. Thanks for coming.